Hey everyone, so in this section we're going to be talking about the University of the People, whether or not their programs are something that you should consider for your future. Now, I want to start off with saying this is not at all a sponsored segment. I have absolutely no affiliation at all with the University of the People. At the time of this recording, I simply came across these programs and figured that they would drive value to a lot of people, so I thought that I'd bring them to the forefront and discuss them a little bit here. So, for those of you who don't know, the University of the People is trying to bring a world-class education to people who are located all over the world. Now, this sounds very familiar. In fact, it sounds very similar to what a massively open online course initiative is trying to do. However, it's actually very different. In fact, the University of the People is kind of taking it to the next level. The University of the People is trying to deliver full degree programs at a very, very nominal fee. In fact, they're charging essentially just the fees associated with delivering these degrees, and it's taking into consideration maybe proctoring fees, registration fees, administrative fees, and that type of thing as well. This differs from massively open online courses because in a lot of cases, while they are able to provide students with a world-class education from world-class institutions as well, they have been doing so at a fee, and in some cases, these fees are actually quite substantial. And so it's kind of acted as a barrier for some people who would otherwise be very interested in the programs, but couldn't actually afford the particular fees associated to them. So University of the People is trying to figure out whether or not they can actually deliver similar types of programs from an institution that's kind of come up as a result of a variety of different professors who are trying to run with this initiative to see whether or not the outcomes are going to be favorable for candidates. Now, as of right now, they offer 3 degree programs at the undergraduate level and 1 master's program. The master's program is actually the MBA program, which in my opinion is a very interesting master's degree to actually start with. And that's something that we're going to touch upon briefly in this segment. But at the bachelor's level, you've got the Bachelor of Computer Science, you've got the Bachelor of Business Administration, as well as the Bachelor of Health Science. Now, the Bachelor of Computer Science definitely makes sense for a couple of different reasons. Number one is the fact that the technology field in general is so hungry for qualified individuals from a variety of different backgrounds. In fact, they're looking at a lot of non-traditional candidates. Students have come from programming boot camps or who are self-taught or have taken massively open online courses, individual courses on a part-time basis, don't necessarily have the credentials on paper, but have been able to exemplify their skills through a portfolio, which is great. And so I think that this is actually going to be fairly well received amongst this particular community. However, it's going to be really interesting to see whether or not this actually translates for the health science students as well as the business administration students. The reason for this is that a lot of the health science students will typically go into more traditional areas of employment. And so it'll be really interesting to see whether or not hospitals or other institutions that are going to be looking at these types of candidates are actually at the level of the technology field where they're actually looking past kind of traditional credentials or the reputation of the school that the student might have come from as well. And so it'll be really interesting to see what outcomes are actually associated to that program as well. Business administration is also very interesting, and I'm going to touch upon the MBA right now because of the fact that MBA outcomes from a top tier institution is going to vary dramatically from the outcomes at a fourth tier unranked school. And a lot of students, even at the most elite level, have questioned whether or not the MBA has the return on investment it once did, whether or not it's something that's even worth pursuing. And so coming out with this program is going to be revolutionary because they're going to be able to attract a lot of students who otherwise probably wouldn't have even looked at the MBA program. They might have actually been qualified to get into it. They probably would get a lot out of the program, but they, for whatever reason, maybe it's financial or maybe it's personal or professional reasons, they couldn't actually justify the investment that was going to come along with the actual degree program. So this is completely revolutionary in that respect as well. It's also really nice to see that the University of the People has been able to cultivate a lot of academic and professional partnerships as well too. So it'll be really interesting to see how this materializes in terms of actual job placement statistics as well. I think that's something that we'll see within the coming years. I think as of right now, it's a really great initiative to actually deliver a lot of the education. It'll be really interesting to see whether or not it actually competes with a lot of the counterparts within that particular region or within the world as well based on their offerings. And so I think that these programs themselves are a great opportunity for students all over the world to not only pursue a world-class education, but to be able to network with people from a variety of different walks of life and to not necessarily have the economic standards that will actually hold some students back, but be able to actually deliver educational outcomes that are going to be equitable to people regardless of where they're located. I think it's also revolutionary in the sense that if this is something that does take off and they can open it up to a variety of different fields of study, it'll be really interesting to see whether or not students will actually forego the quote unquote prestigious universities that students are traditionally kind of vying for in present time. I think a lot of what this is going to depend on is going to be how industry actually views these particular degrees. It'll be really interesting to see whether or not students who come out of these programs, even at the undergraduate level, are able to get into some of the prestigious postgraduate programs at some other institutions as well. A great example is students that studying the health sciences. A lot of those students will typically go on to postgraduate studies. It'll be really interesting to see whether or not somebody from the University of the People who has a 4.0 as an example, really strong standardized test scores, can actually get into one of the Ivy League institutions or another prestigious university for medical school as an example, or for their master's degree or whatever it happens to be. I think that'll add a massive stamp of approval to these programs. But another thing will also be whether or not employers will eventually, view them as comparable to somebody who's come from an Ivy League institution or a top state school or something of that nature as well. And I think time will only tell. I think a huge stamp of approval already is the fact that many of the professors that are teaching these programs and many of the administrators that are involved in this program do already come from academia. And so a lot of them do have quite a bit of experience teaching at the university level, and they do have quite a bit of credentials behind them as well. And so I think that that in and of itself is really going to add a massive stamp of approval. I also think that the fact that they've been able to form partnerships with very, very prestigious universities is also a massive stamp of approval as well. In fact, they have a really innovative partnership with the University of California, Berkeley, which is also opening up admissions to students who've received an associate's at the University of the People to potentially be able to transfer at a later time to one of their undergraduate studies as well. So completely innovative stuff here. I'd love to hear your comments and questions in the comment section below. If you've taken any courses here, or if you know anyone who has, or if you're pursuing a degree, or you know anyone who has, I'd love to know more information about it as well, because I think that if this is something that can be leveraged correctly, and if it's something that they can open up across a variety of different faculties and across a variety of different fields, I think can be completely game changing and revolutionary. So as always, thank you so much again for watching. If you liked it, please remember to subscribe and to like. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.